Welcome everyone again. My name is Sami Awad. I am co-director of Nonviolence International, and I will host today's webinar entitled Beyond Political Illusions: What This Moment Demands of Us. Nonviolence International is a backbone organization for the global nonviolent movement. We provide fiscal sponsorship and training, and we spread knowledge and transformative stories of dynamic, emerging nonviolent movements that give us hope in difficult times. In short, we are reshaping with you what we view as possible. Today, we are confronted with this very question: what is possible? For decades, many of us organized and advocated within certain political frameworks when it came to the crisis in Palestine, the Israeli-Palestinian situation, the occupation, the injustice that we face in this land. All of these were political possibilities that felt at least that they could hold some acceptable and accessible solution to the situation. The two-state solution, for example, was precedent as the prominent and many times considered the only possible solution. As many of us saw its failure and collapse, we began to see other possibilities, or maybe to return to old possibilities. Jonathan Kuttab, who is one of our speakers today, captured this powerfully in his book, Beyond the Two-State Solution, with even details on how do we achieve peace beyond the framework of the two-state solution. Jeff Halper, our second speaker for today, advocates for what is called the One Democratic State campaign, based on full equality, citizenship for all, decolonization, and international law. Our third speaker, Huwaida Arraf, is an advocate for a rights-based framework grounded in equal rights, accountability, and international law, focusing on what needs to happen now to address the challenges faced by Palestinians. Where things stand now, there seems to be an intentional and direct dismantlement of anything related to Palestinian rights, with growing fascism, colonialism, genocidal and ethnic cleansing agendas, and impunity. We stand today in front of a real question. And the surprises do not stop coming. Just today, if you heard, Benjamin Netanyahu, currently facing an international arrest warrant for alleged war crimes, was added to what is being called the Board of Peace. No need to even mention the names of others on that board. This is the situation where we stand in today. Those who hold power stand completely ignoring the Palestinians, as if Palestinians do not exist, let alone reaching some agreement with them. From this, we want to dive into the question of what this moment demands of us. As activists from around the world committed to justice and peace for all the people in this land, where are we now? What is the assessment of the situation as we are facing it today? And where do we see the possibility of us going? I want to invite each of our speakers, and I will not do a big introduction. We will add their bios in the chat. Many of you already know them very, very well. But I want to ask and invite each of our speakers to take up to 10 minutes to share, in your view, what is happening now? What is your assessment of the situation? In a way, what is your diagnosis? And what is ours to engage in? What light through the cracks of darkness you may still see that we can say, yes, there is something beyond political illusions? I know this is not an easy question, but this is why you are here. This is why you are invited to speak with us today. Once we complete the speakers' presentations or input, I will ask the three speakers if they would like to add anything else or respond to anything that was said by the other speakers before we open up to questions. With this, I would like to invite Jonathan Kuttab. He is also on the board of Nonviolence International, the director of Friends of Sabil, the United States, a human rights lawyer and activist, to begin sharing. Jonathan, what is your assessment of the situation? Where are we now? And what is ours to engage in?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me first? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
yes, very
Uh,
loud, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will try to use my 10 minutes wisely to address a few features of the current situation. I will start by saying that we are living in a really very dangerous and new situation. The question is now far beyond Palestine, Israel. The entire world seems to be in uncharted territories. We have a leader in the United States who seems to be deliberately going out to destroy the mechanisms, the values, the structures, the organizations which have constituted the world international order, as well as the order within the United States. He seems to be brashly saying whoever has the cards, whoever has the power, can do whatever they want. In his own words, he says the only restraint on him, he feels, is his own morality. Of all the things that he could choose, the morality of Donald Trump is hardly the best criteria for restraining power. So yes, we are living in very dangerous times. But I would like to tell you that there are some very positive things that are happening, and there are some clear guidelines for where we need to go from here. The first is with the apparent collapse of the international order, there is also a collapse of traditional wisdom as to what works and what doesn't work. For many years, there have been clear taboos, clear guidelines as to what is allowed and what's not allowed, what's reasonable and what's unreasonable. If you wanted to participate in a discussion on peace between Israelis and Palestinians, for example, there were certain subjects you were not allowed to bring up. You're not allowed to bring up the right of return. That's too controversial. You're not allowed to question the essence of political Zionism or Palestinian nationalism for that matter. There were some clear guidelines as to what is allowed and what is not allowed, what is reasonable, what's not reasonable. All that has collapsed now. And we are being invited to think out of the box. The traditional solutions have not worked at all. Even violence as an instrument for achieving national or political goals has shown its limitations. The utter viciousness and tremendous amount of technology and bombs that have been used on Gaza, on just a tiny small strip of land, has really failed to provide a solution, failed to provide Israelis with security, has stripped many of the masks, the traditional frameworks. So that's a wonderful opportunity, I think, that we need to take into consideration. A second positive element is that Information is now available worldwide in a way that was never available before. When 1948 took place, very few people knew what happened. People knew about Deir Yassin mostly because of Israeli research that was done. The tens of other massacres that were taking place were unknown, papered over, ignored. Even in the Arab world and in the Palestinian community, these things were talked about among families, among the victims, but were not part of the available information network. Now everybody knows, everybody can see. The issues are out there, and the issues are now being discussed in a fundamental way. They're talking about Zionism. They're talking about genocide and ethnic cleansing and apartheid. They're talking about what is it that creating a Jewish state means anyway. What is it that Palestinian nationalism is all about, and Arab nationalism for that matter? So all these issues are now out there, and this gives us a wonderful opportunity. Third, and I want to be very, very brief, I think the temptation which most of us fell into to try and be Kissinger, to try and find the Holy Grail, find the right formula, and then try and sell it. I think that has also collapsed. The task is now no longer to find the right formula, but to address the real issues. And we in the activist, peace-oriented community, I think have learned, or should have learned, to become a little bit more humble as to our ability to effect the final outcome. In a way, if I can put it in religious terms, our task is not to solve the problem, but to be a faithful witness, to be true to our principles and what we believe in, and somehow trust God or history for the final outcome. We are not Kissinger. We are not called upon to solve this problem. We don't have the tools, we don't have the power, we don't have the means to resolve it. We do have the tools and the power and the obligation to act with honesty, with integrity, with human compassion, to reduce the suffering, to point the way towards a peaceful solution of reconciliation, to use the tools of nonviolence. And I emphasize nonviolence here because I think it must be stated very openly and clearly. Violence is not the answer. It will not provide the solution to the maladies of the moment. It will not provide the Israelis with security, and it will not provide Palestinians with liberation and democracy. So the beauty of nonviolence is, at the very least, it does no harm to people. It does not increase the hatred, the destruction, and the pain that are felt by people. So we have a task. We cannot be silent. We have to do something. What we do has to arise out of our commitment to nonviolence, to human rights, to international law, to reconciliation, to justice, and to the values that make life worth living for Palestinians as well as for Israeli Jews. This is the task that we have, and I think this is all the time that I have been given to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, thank you for your sharing and for your input. And I just want to take a moment to welcome the LCC class, International University students. You just look amazing watching us on the screen in front of you. Thank you for joining us. And to move to Jeff. Uh, First of all, welcome, Jeff. You've been involved as an activist for more years than I can imagine. And to give just a brief about Jeff Halper, he is an Israeli anthropologist, director of ICAD in Jerusalem, and founding member of the Palestinian-led One Democratic State campaign. In 2008, Jeff and Huwaida actually participated together in the first and one of the few successful attempts of the Free Gaza movement to break the Israeli siege by sailing into Gaza. So there is a long, long history of activism and engagement. And Jeff, you seem to not give up. You seem to continue. You seem to be in your full power. And just share with us where it's coming from. What do you see? What is your assessment, especially also as an Israeli living in the land, seeing what's happening on the Israeli side? Where do you see things are and things going, and what is your call for us?
All right. Well, thank you for that, Sammy. Thanks for having me. I think this is a really important discussion, and and I hope it'll be continued. I think should be only the beginning because this is exactly the discussion we need at this political moment. I want to be, as I always am, Jonathan's antithesis. Jonathan and I have probably known each other, I don't know, for 50 years or something. And we love each other and we don't agree on in terms of certain political analyses. Although we work together very well and we complement each other, I have to say. And I'm saying this because I think, in fact, we do have to be political actors. I don't know if we have to be Kissingers. I wouldn't want to be Kissinger, even if I had the power to be Kissinger. But certainly we have to be political actors. We're in a political struggle. And I really do believe we have to solve the problem. I mean, we have to end Zionist colonialism, settler colonialism. We have to end occupation. We have to end the apartheid regime, and we have to find a just way forward for Palestinians and their rights, and for an inclusive resolution of this whole thing. We have to become political actors. There aren't any other political actors. Uh, and therefore, I've been trying. That's what I've been trying to advocate for the last decades. That we have to be political actors, not activists, because activists tend to be localized. They tend to be reactive. They don't have strategies. They don't have programs. They don't, they're activists. And it's important to have activists, but you have to mobilize them, you have to direct them, and you have to give them leadership. And we're missing today political actors. Now, I want to say three things in just a few minutes we have in this vein. First of all, it's very hard to talk about political solutions, political organization, political programs at a time of genocide. I mean, certainly we have to stop for a minute and remember the genocide that's going on in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. I mean, yesterday Israel opened a whole major military operation in Hebron. The Gazification of the West Bank is going on. And I've even had people say to me, including Palestinians, no, it's inappropriate for us to talk about politics, especially some future where we all live together in a time of genocide. And I understand that. But we have to multitask. If we're going to be political actors, we have to be connected to what the political processes are, what the political events are. The world's not going to wait for us to decide now is the time when we want to begin to engage in political action. We have to do that today despite the genocide that's going on. So I want to just start, and I know I only have a couple minutes, with where we are in the struggle. I think it's really important that we understand the wider struggle for Palestinian national rights and a just resolution. Where we are is this. The Zionist settler colonial movement, and settler colonialism is a crucial part of this. That has to be our conceptual framework. This has to be the analysis from which we begin to understand the logic and the processes and the structures of this terrible oppressive situation that we're in order to dismantle and decolonize them. The Judaization of Palestine, which is the very purpose of Zionism, to turn Palestine into Israel, to turn an Arab country into a Jewish country, has been completed. It's over. Israel doesn't need any more settlements. It's over. And the country has been Judaized, which means de facto, we already have one state. The whole idea of one state, two states, confederations, can't, that's over. There is one state today, and it's an apartheid state. Israel controls all of historic Palestine, and all the systems, the legal systems, the military systems, the political systems, economic system, whatever you want, the land Israel controls today. And that's the reality. Now, Israel, now where we are is really, settler colonialism has an end. This isn't something that's going to go on forever. And how does it end? It ends through normalization, not through some big defeat of some Palestinian army. It ends through normalizations by simply being accepted as normal by the international community, by the Arab world. And Sammy's absolutely right, and Jonathan is right. The Palestinians aren't even a consideration. The Palestinians are not political actors in all of this. Normalization is an imposed, it's not a negotiation, it's imposed by states. The United States, Israel, and the Arab regimes. And the Palestinians aren't asked about it. And the danger for the Palestinians is after normalization, there's no more political space. It's over. It's a closure because normalization is normalization. It's normalized. And the world goes on to other issues, Sudan, Greenland, Ukraine, whatever. And that's really the danger facing us. So if in terms of an actual campaign that should be launched, it should be a campaign against normalizing Israeli apartheid, the Abraham Accords, because this is, we're on the cusp of this. It isn't some far off kind of a thing. The mechanism, the framework of normalization is in place. Now, what's missing is one more piece that Israel needs. It's Judaized. It's on the way to normalization, but there's a piece in the middle that gives us a certain opening. And that is that Israel has to pacify the Palestinians. It has to break all Palestinian resistance in order to go on to normalization, because normalization needs a period of quiet where you can really pretend that normalization is taking place. And that's what Gaza and the West Bank are today. This tremendous surge of violence, of genocidal violence, is being done because unless Israel can break all Palestinian resistance, this is really total victory. Netanyahu's phrase has a meaning. Israel cannot go ahead, and Saudi Arabia cannot go ahead with normalization. And so, sometimes we work disconnected from political processes. This is the call of today. We have to stop the normalization process today, and that means a campaign against normalizing Israeli apartheid. But who's going to do that? We have no organization. There's no organization here in Palestine or Israel. There's no organization abroad. There's organizations, but there's no coordination. The second thing I want to say really quick is that the only solution, the only way out of this is one democratic state. I'm not going to get into all of that. I wrote a book about it called Decolonizing Israel, Liberating Palestine. One democratic state, which is just and inclusive and addresses Palestinian needs and Palestinian rights. You can't be in a political struggle without a political program. And so one of the things we have to focus on is a political program. The One Democratic State campaign that I'm a part of has a 10-point political program. It's a good beginning, but it needs much more discussion. You're not a political actor if you're not presenting a program. Otherwise, it's a vacuum that others are filling, but not us. The third and last thing I want to say then is we've got to be political. This is the missing piece. There's no PLO today. The Palestinian political parties are completely dysfunctional. You have a lot of human rights and international law stuff going on, which is great, but It's not going to get us anywhere. Even the Prime Minister of Canada yesterday said we're past this idea of international rights and international law, human rights. Oh, it's nice stuff, but it's not political. It's not effective in any way. There's a lot of activism going on. There's a lot of BDS going on. There's a lot of academic analysis going on, but there is no political peace. There's nothing political happening. There's no organization. There's no coordination, there's no strategy, and there's no program. And despite the tremendous suppression, I mean, Sammy can address this, the unbelievable suppression that the Palestinians are living under today, not only from Israel, but from the PA as well, this political movement, a liberation movement for Palestinian rights, has got to be led by Palestinians. And so the call that I have is we have to organize around the political program, we being, first of all, the Palestinians, with maybe anti-Zionist or at least comrades like me, and there are other Israelis like me. And then we have to mobilize and organize and give direction to the international community that is supporting the Palestinians. I mean, this is the good news. Jonathan talks about good news. That is, yes, the world is mobilized around Palestine. The world does see what's happening, but it doesn't know what to do with it. We have to give them, and especially the Palestinians have to give direction, and especially we have to give to provide a political program that people can begin to advocate for. I was hoping the One Democratic State campaign would do that. I'm not sure if that's going to be, but some kind of organization and initiative like this has to emerge. So I hope I didn't go over my 10 minutes, but that's my message.
Wow, Jeff. Thank you for everything you said. And I agree with many things you said. And one thing that you started with, this is a conversation that needs to exist and continue. This is the pivotal point that we are in, and coming together as the international community, as the Palestinian communities, as Israelis committed to justice and peace. This is the time for that in the face of everything that is happening. So thank you for your sharing, and I'm sure there will be many. I have many questions for you, but we will get back to that after we listen and hear from Huwaida Arraf, our last speaker. Huwaida, even being very ill, thank you for joining us today. And just to share a little bit about Huwaida, Huwaida is a Palestinian American civil human rights attorney and social justice activist. She has been involved in legal, political, and grassroots initiatives for Palestinian rights. It says here for 2 decades, but I think we've worked much more than 2 decades in this field together, including the founding of the International Solidarity Movement and leading the Free Gaza movement, which began in 2008. Huwaida, thank you for joining us. And again, as the leading and a leader activist in this field for many decades and many years, where are we now? And where are we going? What is it that you see? How do you assess the situation? And from that point of view, what is the call for us?
Thank you. Thank you, Sammy. My bio says 2 decades, and I think that's aged me enough, and now you've aged me even more than that. But
Just to honor the history of your involvement.
I appreciate the generous introduction and really appreciate Nonviolence International's vital work in holding this space for us. And thank you to everyone for being here. I'm speaking to you from the unceded land of the Anishinaabe people, Three Fires Confederacy, in the area of Metro Detroit. And I really apologize, as my voice is probably going to be a little bit annoying to listen to. You know, Jeff started off his talk by saying how he disagrees in his political analysis with Jonathan. I think I fall somewhere in the middle, and I'll try to give you that. I think when we ask what is happening now, we have to start with raw truth. Okay. I don't think to anyone here we have to assert that we are and have been witnessing a live stream genocide. And I argue that genocide even started before October 2023. And if we need to talk about that, we can do that in the question and answer. But language that has been used for years and for decades, language of conflict and cycles of violence, and that's all been an anesthetic for really the conscience of the world. It's been designed to numb us to the reality that we have a nuclear armed state backed by unparalleled impunity, systematically destroying an imprisoned population. It is not a conflict. It is a decades-long settler colonial project that's been designed to get rid of the Palestinian people, and it has been happening for 8 decades. And so the international community presented us with this two-state solution that the Palestinian leadership at the time bought onto and is still kind of going with. And that has been, in a sense, a bureaucracy that's weaponized a process to manage the pace of colonization, because colonization didn't end with the talk about peace, with the signing of the Oslo Accords. It pretended to stop, but anyone that's paying attention know it has not. Just like now we know that there is supposedly a ceasefire and Palestinians are being killed every single day, and Israel continues to take land, not just in the West Bank, but also in Gaza. And as Jonathan said, we have a board of peace now that has a wanted war criminal that is appointed to it, and other war criminals that should be wanted by the ICC. And so this two-state solution has long been dead, and yet when we talk about ending the conflict or ending the what they call a war in Gaza, talking about getting back to the two-state solution, that has to be rejected. In my introduction said that I advocate for a rights-based process, and that has always been the case. And it might go against what Jeff has said here, but it is intended to, because just that we have to, present a political program and go towards the one state program. But people need to understand that we have to first reject an utterly dehumanizing framework that we have been put in. Okay. Palestinians are not subjects of a political deal. We are human beings and we are endowed with inalienable rights. And that's why I insist on this rights-based framework that is grounded in international law. Though just the other day I was telling my husband, I kind of feel silly talking about international law these days because it has been so decimated. Okay. Politics can be negotiated. Rights cannot. We have the right to life, the right to return, to equality, to self-determination. And that has not only been eroded, but it was clearly abandoned by the UN system shamelessly in the last resolution that was passed, the Security Council resolution 2803, where the UN Security Council adopted the Trump-based plan, which basically says that Palestinians have to earn the right to negotiate for self-determination, which just a year ago, the International Court of Justice confirmed that Israel is violating Palestinian right to self-determination, and Palestinians are entitled to it now, and it is not based on any kind of negotiations, and the occupier does not get to place conditions on Palestinian rights of self-determination. So that is why I continue, and that rights-based framework doesn't necessarily have to be detached from a political program, but we can continue to say why and reject this two-state farce that they put us in. And I'll get to another thing that Jeff talked about before I want to get to my ultimate kind of action, at least immediate action plan. Jeff was talking about the need to have really a political program of political actors, and Palestinians we do recognize that it is a great failure that we have a Palestine Liberation Organization that has basically been subsumed or dismantled really by the Palestinian Authority that is, was supposed to be a temporary administrative body that has become not only de-democratized, but really authoritarian and with no plan but to follow the United States diktats. And it has been an utter failure and a shame, and largely, I'm going to say, responsible, not for what's happening to us, but for the fact that Palestinians don't have a stronger leadership on the international scale. And if we do, because we do have a strong international global movement in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but it is lacking the strong political direction from Palestinian leadership. And we recognize that, and Palestinians have been trying to um, really address that. And I am part of about 3 different initiatives that is working to address that issue. I won't get into the details of that, but I will say that having political actors and um, it is up to Palestinians to determine that and to determine that program. And in the absence of that, we do have Palestinian civil society leadership. We do have Palestinian civil society that have put out a program that is based on achieving rights under international law and asking the international community to advocate on that basis and to adopt strategies to isolate Israel, right, through boycotts, divestment, sanctions. That is meant to put the necessary pressure on Israel to force it to abide by international law. And that is a program that the international solidarity community can follow. So there is, as bleak as things are, and I was also listening to Trump talk in Davos this morning, and if it wasn't so serious, one would just laugh at every sentence that he said. But there are lights. There are cracks, and there is a light through the cracks into, the horrific situation that we see ourselves in globally, the destruction of international law, this insistence that military might is right. But the light is not in the halls of power. It's in the street and it is on the seas. As Sami mentioned, I have been involved in this effort to directly challenge and break the naval blockade on Gaza through international nonviolent direct action. What started, with the 2 boats that Jeff and I were on the seas, 2 small fishing boats in 2008, this past summer, 2025, hopefully many of you were following, we were over 50 boats and hundreds of people on the sea. And this spring, we are planning the largest flotilla to date, even though Israel has been attacking us, even though Israel has been illegally attacking our ships, commandeering them, abducting people against their will, hundreds of internationals, and seriously abusing also internationals. We have the movement that is only growing. We are not giving in to Israel's might. And it's important to reject the force that Israel's putting even towards internationals. So we reject any kind of, criticism or question in terms of why put yourself in that situation, because we cannot give in, right? We cannot give in to Israel's attacking us, so we must stop. If we just think about what the world has accepted with regards to this blockade, and it's only one aspect of the genocide, but a blockade that has been in place since 2006. And of course, Israel's control over Gaza has been long before that. But that blockade has now become a tool of the genocide because the international community has done nothing about it. And we have a situation where Israel's deliberately starving people. Israel has been accused by every major human rights organization of carrying out a genocide. And yet we allow this genocidal entity that is trying to exterminate the Palestinian people decide if any humanitarian aid is going to get to a people that they are trying to annihilate. And this is the global order that the world wants us to accept, and the powers that are enabling Israel. And this is because we have allowed that to happen, because of that impunity, is we are seeing all of this other craziness taking place. Palestinians have long said that we are, the canary in the coal mine, right? It's what scholars and organizers have been saying for a long time, what they call the imperial boomerang, right? The violence tested on colonized people and Palestinians have been a test subjects for decades. It never stays there. It comes back. And those of us in the United States know that it is coming back if we are watching what ICE is doing. It is almost a mirror image of the policies that Israel has been carrying on for decades. And all of we have to realize how all of our struggles are interconnected. And part of it, why I say we are rejecting that Israel's violence used against us is going to stop us, because that kind of crazy world order where you accept that a country that is committing genocide is allowed to determine if any aid is going to get to a people they're trying to exterminate, That is crazy. That is crazy. That is inhuman. And that makes all of us unsafe if we accept that. And so we're going to continue to challenge that. And we are planning this spring, and I want you all to be involved in the largest flotilla that is going to take to the sea, but it's not just going to be at sea, right? It is going to be, and the power of it is what is done on land all across the world. It is the port closures, the protests, the disruptions that is going to support the ships at sea, demanding that our governments demand that Israel stand down and that our ships that are going to be carrying not just civilians and not just humanitarian aid, but reconstruction supplies. Israel is not letting Palestinians rebuild hospital, doctors, and medicines. And it's not about the aid, but we will be carrying what Palestinians in Gaza need and what Israel is preventing from getting in. But it is more about the fact that Israel has no right to control what gets in and out of Gaza or in any part of occupied Palestine. And so we are asserting global, powerful international intervention through this nonviolent direct action, and in the hopes that we will force our leaders to follow. But our leaders, governments have failed, spectacularly failed, and they are taking us into a world where no one is safe. And that is what we are rejecting through this action. And so I invite you all to participate. The U.S. arm of the flotilla movement is U.S. Boats to Gaza. You can get our website there, and please sign up,
We will add
donate,
that for sure. Yeah.
or the freedomflotilla.org for if you are in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Huwaida. Thank you for sharing your heart and your call as well. Before we open it up for questions, I just want a comment that I have, because each person started by saying, I disagree. And then for me, in those disagreements, I actually see a lot of alignment between the three speakers. A speaker that says we need to acknowledge and be present to the reality of what's happening now. This is the situation, and this is where we move from. We cannot live the illusions of the past or the future. This is where we are, and this is where we need to move from. Acknowledge this, in a way, normalize our mindset to accept this so that we could also move within it and through it. Jonathan presenting nonviolence as the tool of how we move in this reality, how we organize through nonviolence, a means of resisting those systems of oppression that are part of this normalized system, and then returning back always to the basic rights. We are fighting for rights. This is not just about politics, but at the core of it, it is about human rights. It is about civil rights. It is about equal rights for all the people here. And so with this, I first want to actually invite the speakers, if they have any response to each other. I actually think this is going to be one of many, many sessions coming up. But Jonathan, you have your speaker opened. If you have anything that you would like to share.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify a statement in order that Jeff can rest assured. I am not saying we avoid politics or a political program or a political solution. To the contrary, all our work is definitely political. What I am saying is that for many years, a lot of the discussion was about what that solution is going to be like. So much time has been spent on, is it two state, one state, is it this way or is it that way? And that's what I was trying to say. That's the discussion we should try to avoid. But I do agree. We do have to present people with a vision of where we want to go, which is what I did in Beyond the Two-State Solution, what Jeff did in his One Land for All, and what Huwaida is doing in her rights-based solution. What I do think is the task before us right now is to translate the international understanding and support for justice in Palestine into something concrete. And I think this is where nonviolence can be active. I love what Huwaida was saying about how the entire world needs to come together, for example, on a very specific task, which is break the siege of Gaza. That siege needs to be broken. People need to have access to go in and out of Gaza products need to come in and out of Gaza. And the entire world is complicit in this process. Israel is too small and the world is too interconnected for Israel to be able to impose a genocidal policy that has no justification in security or otherwise on an entire people. So ports need to be closed. Corporations need to be picketed and closed. Banks need to be challenged for their participation in this ongoing genocide. Unions need to step up. Sport fans and sports organizations need to move. BDS is not just a slogan. It is a mechanism by which ordinary people will act when their own governments are failing to act towards justice, towards ending genocide and apartheid, towards imposing international norms of human rights, towards peace and towards justice. This is, I think, the task before us, is to find those levers of pressure, of power, of influence to translate the understanding and the support that exists worldwide, translate it into something that actually can impact the situation on the ground. I think it is possible, and I think this is the task that is ahead of us.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jeff, you have a couple of sentences before we open up for questions?
Well, just one observation and one sentence. I mean, about what Jonathan and Huwaida were talking about, the new flotilla that's being planned or whatever. You know, when we originally got involved with the Free Gaza thing in 2008, the idea was to break the siege. We did not want to be humanitarian. We actually, completely rejected that because that's part of the problem. They're looking at this as a humanitarian crisis, and that blocks out the political. So we decided in those days to say we are breaking the siege of Gaza. We brought some hearing aid, we brought some things. We didn't want to come empty-handed, but we did not bring humanitarian aid in any form. And I think there's a question here about whether or not the humanitarian part should be a part of the breaking the siege flotilla. I'll leave that to Huwaida. I think there's a real problematic relationship between humanitarian and political, and I'm not sure if they can be mixed. But my main point, the one thing I want to say is that, look, there's an urgency here. We talk about, there's 1,000 initiatives going on. Everyone is wonderful. And there's BDS going on, and there's hundreds of organizations, and there's all kinds of things. But we're disconnected from, we don't relate to the actual political world out there. Things are happening out there that it's as we live in a vacuum. I haven't heard one word, for I don't think ever from the activist community the world over or in Palestine about normalization. This is the most urgent thing facing the Palestinians. If the Abraham Accords actually go into effect and Saudi Arabia joins, here Azerbaijan is joining, Kazakhstan is joining, Pakistan might join, Indonesia, the political space for the Palestinians is going to get even more closed down. The world's going to say it's over. But nobody, no organization that I know of, no academic that I know of, relates to the actual political events that are taking place, the world we live in. We have our initiatives, all of which are wonderful and have their rights-based stuff, and they're just and they're righteous, but they're not political. And I guess that's really, maybe hearing my voice, I guess, that's my frustration.
We hear you.
I'm sitting here watching us lose. Today I was at a demolition of a home near Hebron. Sammy, can tell more about that. People are dying every day, and there's a lack of an urgency in our actions. There's initiatives, there's this, there's that, but there's no urgency of how do we end this tomorrow? What's happening to this normalization process? What's going on politically? How do we relate to it? One concrete thing I would just throw out at the very end is we need at least an international coordinating campaign on Palestine. So all these organizations and initiatives that you can't keep track of, at least begin to, we can coordinate more between here and abroad and the organizations and the different approaches. We're lacking a center. We have no political center in which we can begin to come together and talk and coordinate and strategize. And I think that's one of the things that has to be done immediately, and it has to be Palestinian led.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jeff. And with that, I do want to acknowledge something that Huwaida said, Jonathan, and I fully agree with, is the serious lack of leadership that exists within our community as Palestinians and the failures of the leadership that has lasted until this point. With this, I do want to open up for questions. We have about 10 minutes. And so my request for those who want to ask to raise your hand. There are some questions that are in the chat, and really make it a question. This is not a space for commentary, for opinion, more about a question that can help all of us in addressing this question that we are in. Where are we and where do we move? So please, yeah, and we'll start with, I do also want to invite students who are with us to join us in questions, especially those international university students that are there. If you have any questions, the young generation that is going to take on the mantle after all of us pass on, please, this is also your space to ask your questions. Jim.
Thanks very much. I've been sitting here agreeing with everything that's been said. I agree with Sammy that there's a great deal of concurrence among the speakers, but with nothing more than what we've emphasized at the end, that we lack an authoritative and effective Palestinian leadership. And my question, and without that, I just see that we're lost. My question is, how can Palestinian civil society and how can Palestinian supporters internationally work to encourage the actions that could create an authoritative and effective Palestinian leadership? And I would also add my own perspective that Jonathan mentioned, an authoritative and effective Palestinian leadership committed to nonviolence, not out of pacifist principle, but out of strategic necessity.
Thank you. Jonathan? And then Huwaida, if you would like to add.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are lacking in Palestinian leadership. I think elections would help, but nobody is going to be allowing elections. Civil society has done a good job, but civil society has been hampered by a bureaucratization process where they are dependent for funding on outside agencies. I was recently in Palestine where Shawan Jabarin from Al-Haq did an excellent job when the Israelis considered Al-Haq a terrorist organization. He didn't hesitate 1 minute after they raided their office. The next day, he opened the office and continued working and says, come and arrest me. And when the U.S. announced that they are imposing sanctions on Al-Haq, he says, I don't care. We will work even if we work for no salary, even if we find different ways to continue to operate when the banks have closed down our accounts. So there is a spirit of resistance, but you are right. We are lacking a Palestinian unified organization. We also are lacking a strategy for nonviolence that is well articulated, as you said, as a practical step for Palestinian liberation rather than a spiritual commitment to avoid bloodshed and violence. These are tasks that we have to fulfill somehow. And I totally agree with you. Leadership is absolutely necessary and is missing and lacking.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Why do you have anything to say to this? There
Uh,
are also comments that are also challenging this idea of leadership in the chat, that it's not just about lack of leadership, it's also how leadership is being targeted by Israel, how leaders are being presented, how potential leaders that have a possibility to unite the Palestinian community have been detained for decades are not allowed. And so it's not just to say there is lack, there's also an intentional attempt to dismantle any possible leadership from emerging.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And we've seen that for decades. The Palestinians, especially the ones who are popular in the streets, have been assassinated or jailed. And Israel and the United States allow who they approve of, right? We also recognize that, and this is part of dealing with it. And we deal with a lot of obstacles in the way right now. Some of you might have noticed I've been distracted. My husband just handed me something that I'm trying to digest, but it's the U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control designating one of the initiatives that I told you about to try to um, read or democratize the Palestine Liberation Organization. It's called the Popular Conference for Palestinians Abroad. And now it looks like they may be designating them as a Hamas affiliated terrorist organization and saying that they organized our flotillas. Anyway, I'll have to read more about that. But there is this effort too of, again, labeling us all as terrorists and putting all of these various restrictions on. Yes, absolutely. These are some of the obstacles that we have to deal with. And this is why, we will continue to try to do that despite the obstacles. But what I was saying also is with all the things that we have to reject, and it doesn't go against what Jeff is saying, but I do want to emphasize that I think activist and local action is incredibly important, because we do have, while not a Palestinian leadership articulated political program, but we do have directions for actions that we can take and that we need to take to raise the costs on Israel and to make it impossible for them to continue doing what they are doing. And that comes back locally. So when we're doing the flotilla at sea to prevent this direct action challenge, it has to translate locally back home. Like your neighbors need to know about it, your local politicians need to know about it and need to do something, because local is where change is made. And it's not separate, like where I am in Michigan and really across the country. And I think the world, we're also recognizing that activists are also our leaders and organizers, right? So we're running, a lot of activists for local and state positions in elections, and we need to do that. We need to take our local actions and make sure that they are the voice of who represent us, and they are putting pressure on our politicians. And if they're not listening to us, then we're going to run people against you. So the local is national and international. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And we are going to go to LCC, the university. We have a question from there.
Get a question? Yeah,
Yes.
for those who are ignorant, could you outline the problems with the two-state solution? If that's
Can you say
not
the question again? Speak louder, the question.
Not everybody quite understands the problems with the proposed two-state solution. Would there be a few sentences that would help educate the main problems with the two-state solution?
This is a very, very big question. I will give maybe like if Jonathan and Jeff and Huwaida, if she wants one line on it, but just to say there's a lot of material out there, and we will put a link for Jonathan's book, Beyond the Two-State Solution, that within that outlines many of these issues. So there's a link that you could download the PDF file with that.
Yeah.
But
I just
one line.
one line. I just want to say that in that book, which is available to download for free if you want, there is an executive summary at the end of about 7 or 8 pages that summarizes the issue very succinctly.
Thank you. All right, maybe we'll leave it at that for the rest of our speakers. Alex, your question.
Yes, thank you. I'm curious how the latest we've often used, we're going back to human rights and international law. And I'm curious how the latest SC resolution passed affects how we're going to talk to people about international law or not, because, now this Board of Peace, so-called, can fit under international law. So I'm curious how, both from a language standpoint, we need to shift. And second of all, what are the new strategies and tactics that we need to follow with this accelerated movement by this criminal group called the Board of Peace? Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of these questions are also common in the chat. How do we respond? What is it that we could do now? Huwaida mentioned some things. Jeff, you have.
Well, we don't really have time to get into a lot of these issues, but what we have to begin to do is begin to adopt an anti-colonial language. So people will understand why the two-state solution isn't working and can't work and could never work. Why Israel is a product of a colonial campaign, that the only solution is to decolonize. Once we begin to use this language, I think people begin to get the logic. Our task is to plug people into the logic of settler colonialism so they can see what is possible and what is impossible. A lot of the direction that we have to go towards one state is dictated by the very logic of settler colonialism. One other thing I want to say really quick, because otherwise I won't get it in terms of an actual, because Sammy, you asked for actual concrete thing. The leadership exists among Palestinians. I know hundreds of Palestinian leaders on the ground, at the universities, all over the society that are there and that are active and that are thinking and that are completely capable. The problem is the Israeli suppression and the PA suppression to such a degree that it's true. Any Palestinian over the age of 12 that raises his or her head to take some political action will get killed or arrested or worse. Worse than arrested. And so I think one thing concrete that you could do abroad internationally is to help provide space for these Palestinian leaders to come together. In Palestine, it's impossible for them to meet. It's impossible for them to communicate. Even if they sent a Facebook post about one state from Nablus to Hebron, they'll get arrested. So I think international communities, churches in particular, could organize retreats, have the Palestinians you're working with, each, in smaller groups, have 20 or 30 Palestinians being invited to Pennsylvania to a church retreat, give them a week. Palestinians from all over, from the diaspora to 48, to West Bank, to Gaza, to the refugee camps, certainly, to come together in a way they can't do here. Pressure your governments to be sure there's no reprisals against them when they go home, and begin to give them the space that where their leadership they can come together and begin to get to know each other, bridge differences, and begin to come together around a political program. We have to help the Palestinians, the leadership that does exist, to be empowered and to be enabled to come together as a political force. But that can't happen in Palestine, in my view. And that's a concrete contribution that the international community could make.
Thank you. So as we are approaching the end, are we going to try this thing that we always do at the end of every webinar, which is asking all those who have raised their hand to just state their questions. At least we are aware of the questions that are present for us in the space. And then we give 2-3 minutes to each of the speakers to respond in the collective or individually to one of the questions. So let's start with Rima, and then we'll just go to Alisander and Justin, Kathy, Hind, and Seth and Brad. Very quickly, sorry for this, but because of the time. Yes, Rima.
Hi, thank you. I'm Rima. I'm from Rome, living in Rome. I have a question to Jeff regarding the extent to which, since he's in Jerusalem, is he in contact with Kairos Palestine or with Jerusalem Voices for Justice? because they both are advocating for the one-state solution. And he also mentioned the churches, and they are all church associated, they're ecumenical groups. So that's my question to Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a question and a very strong statement. Alistair?
Yeah, we're witnessing a rapidly deteriorating situation. The 37 NGOs, UNRWA, all being excluded from involvement. I wonder what's going to stop this relentless process, because there's a triumphalism in Jerusalem. It's a matter of time before all Palestinians are driven out.
Thank you. Thank you. Justine?
Thank you, the speakers, for what you've had to say. I've been active in trying to support Palestinian rights for most of my life. And I appreciate what all of you have said. But if the goal, this is what I think of my question to you, if the goal is eventually one country, one state, for all the people who reside there and the people who were kicked out of there, it seems that while it makes complete sense because they've been so just suffered so much that Palestinians would lead this movement, but I also think of, if the goal is this one state, that Jewish Israelis, Jews, have to be equally along the way in the leadership. That's what constantly occurs to me. And one of the benefits and advantages of Jonathan's book is that he talks about that there has to be a way of seeing the leaders as coming together in organizing the project, as in South Africa, which isn't a complete perfect example. It eventually did that, and that was how there was the success that was achieved. So that's my question about trying to have a political program that was led by both groups of people.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy, it's been decades. Wow, so good to see you.
Hi, Sammy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone who might know about the ICCP, the International Coordinating Committee for NGOs on the Question of Palestine, which functioned during the 80s and early 90s. The point I'm trying to make, it was an international movement, and we all were centered around the PLO. We followed the dictates of the PLO. There were factions who did not always agree, but nonetheless, we all worked together on the international forum. And I know Don Betts and myself and a few others have been trying to get this not a reinstitution of the ICCP, but a new group to form, and it's been very difficult because there's nothing we can rally around that's coming from the Palestinian leadership.
Thank you, Kathy. And if you would like to add some contact or something that people can follow up with you in the chat, please feel free to do so. Hind.
Yes, hello. My question is, and it's based on all the fantastic things that have been said here. Do you have a strong international partner or partners who are not under the knee of the US or Israel or the other colonizers that you can partner with? That's almost a group that is a response to this horrific farce, the peace group. Because Israel is killing every potential leader. So we need an international group that comes together and becomes the leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. Seth? You're muted, my friend.
Thank you. Seth Copperdale in New Jersey, USA. We were talking about a political solution, and I heard Jonathan's word about hope, that we can talk about things we've never been able to talk about before. I live in a town, it's 35% Orthodox Jewish folks, and it has been amazing to be able to say the genocide word out loud and to see the total transformation. I'm wondering if some of these political goals that Jeff speaks about might be global in light of, instead of the transformation of political and Palestine per se, the win by Mayor Mamdani and others signal to us that specific political asks of the Palestinians, if we had somebody giving us the talking points, we know Abrahamic Accords need to not ever happen. People could win on those sorts of things globally. If that may be an angle where like a global transformation in the direction of Palestine actually helps serve Palestine from a safer spot. That's just my question.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Brad, last question. Thank you for joining us.
My question is, how dangerous is the threat of Israel's nuclear? And I'm thinking that if we could get radical Palestinians to stop talking about destroying Israel, then there's no need for any use of nuclear weapons.
Thank you for your question. Thank you. And we will give a minute to each person from the panel, and take this time as also wrapping it up in any way you want. You heard the questions. Questions are always asked to be presented in the collective space. And so maybe Jonathan, you would lead us with any comments, any closing remarks, or if you want to respond directly.
Okay. My one comment is that we now see that the issue is global, that our freedom is tied to the freedom of people everywhere, that we need to do some new thinking out of the box. We need to open up to new communities that in the past we haven't opened up to. You mentioned the religious Jews, the Orthodox Jews. Somebody mentioned other constituents, China, for example, that we have almost ignored entirely. Communities that need to be brought into the struggle, because our struggle is for freedom and for freedom for everyone. Nonviolence, the beauty of nonviolence is at least it does no harm. It does not increase the hatred and the bitterness. And it provides a tool, it provides a path, it provides a vision, it provides a hope for people for the future. That's all I can say at this point. I just want to say that it also provides hope. We should not give up. We should continue in the struggle, and we are not helpless and we are not hopeless. There is much that we can and should do.
Thank you. Jeff?
Well, I guess my message is it's time to get political. And, I think from what I've said tonight, I would have just four suggestions. One is to begin to work, all of it, because we're all networked. It isn't like we're starting from scratch. To begin to think about organizing an international coordinating committee on Palestine, in which major organizations in the world and smaller localized organizations supporting Palestinian rights could come together and begin to coordinate better. Second, we've got to organize, and when I say we, I don't know who we is, because again, there's no center up, but I throw the idea out, and this international coordinating campaign could do it.
His
That would be
son-in-law was the one that brought us.
a campaign against normalizing Israeli apartheid. Crucial. A third thing is we have to begin to have much more discussion around a political program, and that feeds into my idea of you guys all helping the Palestinians to create a political space in which the Palestinian leadership that does exist, intellectual and activist and political, can come together and begin to really work towards a political program and political organization. We have to find ways of empowering the Palestinians. But we've got to think politically, and we have to think about this issue of normalization, because I think this is the huge challenge for us that we're not even seeing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Huwaida, and then I'm going to hand it after Huwaida to Mubarak Awad, the founder of Nonviolence International, and the guy that I blame for me doing what I do now. Huwaida.
Yeah, thank you. Briefly to address the question on the implications of UN Security Council Resolution 2803, I pasted a link in the chat to an op-ed I wrote about this. I would argue that even though Security Council resolutions have the force of law, this one is not valid because it actually violates the very purpose of the UN Charter, which guarantees the right to all people to self-determination. When you pass a UN Security Council resolution that undermines the people's right to self-determination, that is not valid. But of course, we know that international law depends on implementation by states, and we see what is happening right now with states totally disregarding it or manipulating it. And the one thing that we can do to change that is to act locally in order to put pressure and to elect people to make consequences for our leaders that are choosing the path that they are choosing, because implementation of any law comes down to political will, especially international law. And the question to us is, are we going to let them destroy the international system, as imperfect as it is? It needs to be reformed, but not dismantled totally that they're doing now. So we need to keep up our actions. And this is why I'm so promoting something and firmly believe in like the flotilla that we're proposing now and that we're actively organizing now, because this can be a huge show of global civil society coming together to actively defy in a nonviolent way what Israel is doing, and that could be a message to the world. And with the corresponding actions all over the world on land, putting pressure on our leaders, demanding the world that we want to see, it can be huge, but only with your participation. And lastly, I will say that I didn't catch the end of what Brad said about destroying Israel. And I don't know who's necessarily talking in that language, but the language that we need to talk in is dismantling Zionism and the very framework, the very foundations that Israel is built on, which is an apartheid settler colonial framework. And it is that regime. And we can't exist in that regime. Like, I am a citizen of Israel. And to briefly address a previous question about what's wrong with the two-state system, the two-state solution that they're talking about will never give me equal rights because I'm not Jewish. Israel demands that the world recognize it as a Jewish state, and not only in the land that they took over in 48, but as you see, they are expanding their borders. We have to dismantle that framework, and that is not a violent language. That is just a necessary one for a peace. Thanks.
Thank you, Huwaida. Thank you for these very strong comments at the end. Mubarak.
Well, I want to thank everybody. We are increasing in numbers. Every time we have a program, we double our amount of people who are listening. And the whole idea that we are listening, writing what many of you have been suggested. And Jeff, I'm following one of your ideas, and we are going to start an international committee on Palestine. And we will be informing everybody when we write about it and how it is. I want to thank also Sami and Michael from Nonviolence International, as well as all of you who participate. And please keep on. Christianity wouldn't be spread without the 12 disciples. Islam wouldn't be spread around so much without people who call on people to be Muslims. We are calling on you as people who support the Palestinian to tell your neighbor, to tell your synagogue, to tell your churches, your mosque, that we have to be part of this revolution. It's going on, and it's not at this time, it's in its way of asking people to continue their support for a just cause. I appreciate everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, Mubarak. Thank you. And on behalf of Nonviolence International, I want to thank our speakers for tonight. Thank you for bringing back hope and encouraging us to say this is not over, to not give up, and to continue. And so thank you for your commitment to nonviolence. We need all of you in this work, as was said, so that we could build this future that we are dreaming of together. We also invite you to become a monthly donor to Nonviolence International, which is money that we use not just to run the organization, but to support many of our partners on the ground. You could also choose to fiscally support any of our partners through our website. And a recording of this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel soon. Please follow us there, as well as follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And with this, I would love to invite you to maybe open your mics one last time and in